This episode is sponsored by my friend Tracy and my friend Emily, who are both sponsoring 2 episodes a month on the Life Shift podcast Patreon feed. Basically, that is a member support, and that's just helping to contribute to the production costs and anything that I need to keep the show going. As you know, I do all of this myself, and so sometimes I order software or hardware to make the show better than it is the day before. And so if you want to directly support the show, please reach out to me or go to patreon.com/the Life Shift podcast, and you can find out all the information there. Thank you so much for your support. And without further ado, here's the intro to the episode.
So I have the C-section. It's that sort of beautiful moment, very surrendering moment. She's like this blur of pink, like across the room. We actually didn't know if it was a boy or a girl. So it was a real surprise moment to hear we had a girl. We chose not to know. My husband, is with her cutting the cord, and I'm just recovering myself across the room. And of course, they're all taking care of the baby, kind of. And I have one nurse with me, and I'm starting to set off alarms. And then she's, comforts me and says, oh, these are very sensitive. And so she turns them off and kind of goes back to some other work. And then I keep setting them off. And then her face just turned white. And then they just rushed me. And it was kind of amazing. This one doctor, it's almost like it was on her phone. She scanned over my abdomen, and you just saw, my husband explained it. They just all rushed to me and pull me out of the room into a separate area to operate on me.
Today's guest is Taylor Coffman. Taylor, among other things, is a courageous mother, she's a patient advocate, and she's an inspiring voice for those that are navigating rare medical conditions. Her story is really one that will probably resonate with anyone that's faced any kind of unexpected challenge in their lives, no matter medical or something other than that. She shares her harrowing journey through a life-threatening medical crisis right after the birth of her daughter, or pretty much during the birth of her daughter. What started as a normal delivery quickly turned into a battle for survival, as Taylor was diagnosed with the rare condition known as atypical hemolytic uremic syndrome, I think. You'll have to hear her say it later in the episode. This led to multiple organ failures, among other challenges. Taylor's story is not just one about survival. It's really about the power of advocating for oneself and the strength found in this vulnerability. And it is the transformative journey from crisis to using that as empowerment. As you listen, it'll be clear how Taylor's experience inspired her to become a patient advocate, connecting with others and fostering a sense of community in some of life's scariest times. Taylor certainly has a series of life shift moments, as do we all, but I know that her specific story will resonate with you in some way. So keep fighting. Without further ado, here is my conversation with Taylor Coffman. I'm Matt Gilhooly, and this is The Life Shift, candid conversations about the pivotal moments that have changed lives forever. Hello, my friends. Welcome to The Life Shift podcast. I am here with Taylor. Hello, Taylor.
Hi, Matt.
How are you today?
It's great. It's really warm where I am. So I am melting a tad, but it's great. It's a great week starting school. My little one's in preschool. So first week, it's really really special, actually.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations for having a little bit more time to yourself, maybe with the kids' school.
It somehow gets filled up with other things. Yes.
I'm sure many people can understand that. So, well, thank you for wanting to come on to the Life Shift podcast and share your story with another stranger. I know you've been sharing your story for the last year or so in all sorts of ways. So hopefully we have a lovely conversation and help. My goal really is to help people feel less alone in their circumstance just by hearing other people's stories. So thank you for just wanting to be a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think anytime we can, bear witness to people's humanity, it's really empowering for ourselves. And also it's how we get connected as human beings. And I think that that's super important in a time that feels a lot of people are disconnected.
Oh, for sure. And we were talking before recording of how, like, I think growing up, society taught me that we don't share those things. We don't share like the hard, vulnerable parts of our lives because it showed weakness. When really, now I've learned in my 40s that it's kind of strength
Yeah.
showing
Oh,
that.
it's absolutely strength. It is not easy always to bear those parts of ourselves, but I've found that by doing so, it's really brought me into my purpose. So here we are.
Do you find that each time you tell it, you feel a little bit like freer with it, or you're able to tell it in different ways that feel more comfortable to you?
Well, it's interesting. There's a really great quote by, and I always pronounce her name wrong, but I think it's Anais Nin, that we don't see the world as we are. We don't see it as it is. We see it as we are. And I feel the same way about telling my story because I'm not the same person I was a year ago versus the year before. So every time I've told this story, it comes from a newer, fresher version of me, you know? And so it's interesting how I think, what happened to me was, profoundly life shaking. But in my reflection of it, I think the story shifts even. The facts are the same, obviously, but
I
my
can agree with that. Because the Life Shift podcast for me, if you're brand new listening, and just for you, the show, it started as a class assignment. I actually took a second master's degree during the pandemic because I was bored, and I took a podcasting class, and I was like, oh, what am I going to do? And thinking back on my life, when I was 8, my mom died in a motorcycle accident, and at that moment, my parents were divorced, lived states apart. I lived with my mom full time. Like, my life changed in an instant when my dad sat me down and had to tell me that she had died. And growing up, it was like late 80s, early 90s. People weren't talking about mental health. People weren't talking about how to help a grieving child. I absorbed that everyone just wanted me happy and they wanted to see that I was going to be okay. So then I became a perfectionist so nobody would abandon me and all these other things that happened. But all the while, I was wondering, do other people have these like moments in time that just changed everything? And as a kid, you're like, I'm so alone. No one understands. As an adult now, talking to over 150 people, I realize that lots of people have many life shifts in their lives. And if we're lucky enough, we get to the place where we can reflect on those and see what we've learned or how we've changed or what they've done to us in a positive way or a negative way, but have the ability to reflect on it. And so that's really why this show exists. And the reason why I'm so excited to talk to people like you about these moments, even if they are very hard moments to talk about.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, that you bring up childhood because I would say that even I had my own version of that kind of story. My dad didn't pass away, but he just left one day when I was a kid, and just I almost never spoke to him again until he like resurfaced in my 20s. And it's interesting that I think before my child's birth, that was sort of my profound life shift, right? And then I sort of have, had this other sort of rug pulling out from the moment. And I'll just get into it because
Yeah,
I
go
feel like
for
we're
it. We're
talking
beating
around
around
it.
the bush. Yeah.
Yeah. So essentially, before I would say even 2020, I feel like that was the life shift for so many of us as well. Before that time, I was an actor and I worked in project management as my day gig at a radio station and basically an NPR station. And I, had a really great life. And it was time for me and my husband of a couple of years to try to have a family. And, you know, we after maybe a series of a year or so, we got pregnant and I had a very normal pregnancy, worked through all my pregnancy, nothing flagged.
Seemingly normal.
Very normal. Like, I really had good prenatal care. I always preface that with this because I think a lot of people wonder if we just missed something. And I was very, very, they had me like tested every day. I'd go in and they'd do screenings right up to when she was born. So she was doing great. I was doing great. I went in to give birth. It was in induction. So it took as many moms and papas out there know, it takes a few days, and eventually they suggested I go in for a C-section because I wasn't progressing, and they were noticing she had some like heart stress. And I was like, deal done. Me and my doula were like, this is where, after days of trying to have a baby. And so I have a C-section. It's that sort of beautiful moment, very surrendering moment. She's like this blur of pink, like across the room. We actually didn't know if it was a boy or a girl. So it was a real surprise moment to hear we had a girl. We chose not to know. My husband, is with her cutting the cord, and I'm just, recovering myself across the room. And of course, they're all taking care of the baby, kind of. And I have one nurse with me, and I'm starting to set off alarms. And then she's, comforts me and says, oh, these are very sensitive. And so she turns them off and like kind of goes back to some other work. And then I keep setting them off. And then her face just like turned white. And all I could feel was very tired. I just felt
because you were mostly probably numb in
right.
some capacity. Okay.
That's right. So I just felt and it was late into the night. It was like, 1 a.m. in the night. And
a lot of days had been, you've been trying to get to that point.
I hadn't slept at all anyway.
Right, exactly.
2 days.
Right.
And so I just wanted to fall asleep, and then they just rushed me. And it was kind of amazing. This one doctor, it's almost like it was on her phone. She scanned over my abdomen, and you just saw, my husband explained it, they just all like rushed to me and pull me out of the room into a separate area to operate on me. I had like a moment to just grab his hand and say, I love you, because we knew something terrible was happening. I had no idea what, but I knew it was bad.
And you weren't feeling anything. You were just basing this off of all the reactions around you.
Yeah. Oof. It was really like, it's just, imagine in these circumstances seeing everyone panicked.
Well, especially people that are used to seeing so much tragedy, right? So to then see them panic
it was bad. It was really scary. It was really scary. And then, they put me under anesthesia, and then I was out for a while. And I was out, I didn't wake up from anesthesia essentially when I should have. And during this time, poor Zach is like a new dad. He actually couldn't at one point find the baby and me. Like, she was at the NICU. They were checking her out, making sure she was okay. He wasn't sure where I was. And I was being rushed to the ICU because I was essentially hemorrhaging. I was bleeding. They could not figure out from where. And all of a sudden, just like total kidney failure, like they had to throw me on dialysis, constant dialysis. Like, all of a sudden, just everything started going wrong.
Your body was just like shutting down of some sort?
Yeah. And it's so interesting. In that time, they managed to stabilize me with the dialysis and different things. And I remember I think, and I wasn't even that scared, but I started to be able to hear and not be able to wake up.
That's frightening.
Because
they probably think you're out too.
Oh yeah.
They're saying
it's very scary too. I would say essentially I was trapped in my own body, but I did feel like this strange sense of non-panic is the only way I can put it. Like, I wasn't panicking, but I knew I could not wake up. And at one point, because I could hear them talking, at one point I was able to wiggle my toes, and they thought I was having a seizure. And I remember thinking in my head, like, isn't this the international sign for I'm trapped in my body? Like,
I saw this on a movie once.
I know, right.
Yeah,
and
that's frightening.
And I can laugh about it now, but it was truly, truly insane. And I also felt like sometimes I wasn't sure what was a dream and what was not. I had essentially what some people would call like the out of body experience, like in that time. I feel like I remember and I wasn't sure if it was a dream, but who knows, just sitting outside of myself, like watching myself on a table,
Oh gosh.
like being operated on. And I just remember having this thought that I wished I had my cell phone so I could tell Zach I was going to be a while.
That's so interesting.
It was so crazy.
Yeah. How long was this time period, like from the time you gave birth to like all these events that are
Yeah.
happening?
So it's really murky for me, but I had her at 1 a.m. on a Thursday, and I didn't, I think, wake up till late Friday. Or
It was a
maybe
while.
it maybe even Saturday. Like it was a long time.
Yeah. And this whole time, was that in what you can recollect? Is that like when you were hearing, was that most of that time, or was that
It
just
was
like
in
a segment of
pockets.
it?
It
Okay.
was like pockets. Because I couldn't recall it all, but I do absolutely. And they knew that I could because I was saying what they were thinking. Like I could tell them, like, I know you thought I had a seizure, but this is really, I was really just wiggling my toe. Like I even had an
Sure, you freaked them out.
anesthesiologist oh yeah, they were like, is she okay? But thankfully I did wake up, but I still didn't get to meet my baby because pretty much by the time I woke up, it was like Saturday morning. They basically decided to take me back for another surgery, essentially.
After you woke up, they're like, we're going to push you back out.
Yeah, because they were worried that I was still internally bleeding. So I still had to go back for another surgery. And now, and then I'm also being ventilated and all that stuff. So this is like a second round of ventilation. And then finally on Sunday, because that whole time, even when I woke up, I was like, where's my baby? Like, where is she? Like, when do I get to meet her?
How long have I been out? Like,
I know. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was like my number one question, like, where is she? And I remember my delivery doctor brought me her little hat so I could have her hat. But
why couldn't you see her? Is it just because you were too sick
I
and
was
too like
yeah, it was too
vulnerable?
dire for me.
Mm.
I mean, basically, I was like in the most intensive care at that
And they
point.
didn't want like any kind of extra infection or something that could come along with seeing anyone.
It's tough to know exactly. I think there was definitely a lot of permissions involved into taking an infant into the ICU, technically also during COVID times. So I finally get to meet her on that Sunday. They bring her in almost like a Pope mobile into the ICU. She's in this huge
Right,
little
cover. Oh, so
wagon
you just
thing.
really just got to see her.
Well, they let her out. They let me
Okay,
hold
good.
her. Thank God. I don't know what I would have done. But, essentially, it was like the shortest, 20 minutes of my life. They basically let me hold her and feed her a bottle. And, pretty much she went home without me. And I just didn't know if I'd ever see her again.
Right, because you didn't have any. Did you have any answers, or they were still in this mode of like?
There was a bit of a debate. I think if you were going to ask some doctors, they would be like, we knew exactly what it was. And then there were definitely some doctors that didn't. But the problem was what was happening inside my body was truly very multidisciplinary, where essentially speaking, now in retrospect, we know. And if I jump into medical jargon and you're like, slow down, Coffman, like, what do you mean? But essentially what was happening was on my labs, my nephrologist, who is the kidney doctor, noticed that my labs, my platelets were incredibly low. And he was like, whoa, what's going on there? And platelets, I try to explain, are sort of the construction workers of your vascular system. They fix things, they kind of keep it running. And if you have too many, you'll clot. And if you don't have enough, you'll not clot. So he was like, what's going on there? And then he decides to grab a hematologist. And luckily, the two of them basically were like, we think it might be this thing. If it's this rare thing, she needs this very, very powerful infusion right now. And while I was sleeping, essentially, my husband, thank God, was doing so much research, calling all the doctors in the family to see whether or not he should approve this medication on my behalf. And this is when I always say, when you choose a partner, choose choose a partner who will like be able to make medical decisions for you
Wow.
because
Yeah.
it's true that he basically said yes to the medicine, thank God, and that's what helped me get more stable. I still had weeks of issues, but essentially what was happening was my body, the system in my body, was eating away. It's part of the immune system, and it was attacking my own body, and it was disrupting my blood in such a way that I had both a bleeding problem and a clotting problem. So I was having what were called thrombotic microangiopathy, which is tiny blood clots everywhere. So I had tiny blood clots all over my kidneys, in my heart, in my lungs, all over my pelvis. And when they're tiny like that, they attack small blood vessels, but they also move and clump. So I ended up, I've had a heart attack. So like pretty much, I had a pulmonary embolism. I had all these issues. And then I got sepsis. And then I got uremia. And then I got toxic encephalopathy. So it was the waterfall of issues from this birth that just awoke this rare disease, which
So was something dormant possibly in you?
you
Is
know
that
it's
what they're thinking?
interesting. You could call it dormant. For me, technically speaking, at this point in time, with the science that exists, it was idiopathic. So they just don't know. But it could be a gene that they just haven't discovered yet that was not working correctly. But the disease is actually super complicated. So I'll say the name. But it might wash over you like a waiter giving you the salad dressings. But so it has almost two names. The first one is atypical hemolytic uremic syndrome. And the second name would be pregnancy induced complement mediated thrombotic microangiopathy or microangiopathy. I know
Does it
not
have an acronym?
it's not sexy. No, but I wanted to. So I'm going to start one right here. We're going to call it TMA or AHUS or TMA. So it's a mess. It's a mess. When you have a rare disease like this, sometimes there's a lot of debate about like what to call it.
Is this something that people in the world have seen before, or is
Oh,
this a
yeah.
complicate? Okay.
I would say there's about 3,000 or so people in the US that have it.
Okay.
But I actually think my theory is there's actually more than that. What I think there's a really long path to diagnosis. So unfortunately, I think people pass away before they get a diagnosis because there is thankfully a treatment, but that treatment, if you don't get it early enough, the outcomes are not great.
So is this something that after this traumatic long period in the hospital, is this something that continues to be part of your life, or is this something like, okay, you're done with the pregnancy, it was induced, all these things, we fixed it?
No, there's no
No.
cure. There's no cure, sadly. So I will, it's interesting. I think some people never have a problem ever again. They can go off med and it's what I would call a gamble, right? You essentially trigger, it's like your body goes through some sort of stress event. And that's why pregnancy is one of the more common triggers because it's such a stress event that it sort of wakes it up. And I think, I basically take what's similar to like a maintenance chemo essentially every 8 weeks to make sure my body just doesn't try to murder me. um, yeah.
Just thinking about like how fortunate to be in a space where people were able to
Oh,
keep
yeah.
you, I can't imagine, like, that's almost like a right place, right time, although terrible to know that there were people around and your husband
Yes.
being like research and
Yeah.
deciding. I mean,
Yeah.
all those pieces had to come together to make sure that it didn't
That's correct.
take you out.
I think one of the challenges to this disease is it's like once it wakes, you have hours, not days. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's fast.
It's very fast. And so the damage that disease caused then created other problems. So, I then had to deal with, for example, I previewed it before, I now had heart failure. I now had kidney failure. I now had lungs.
So those were all just effects
Yeah.
of
So then my lungs, I got pneumonia. It just would fill up with fluid and I had to drain my lungs a bunch of times. I had a clot in my lungs. I had, at one point, because of kidney failure, my body was poisoning my brain with my own toxins. So
it's not very
so I
nice.
got aphasia, so I couldn't speak anymore. And I couldn't, luckily, like that was days, not, I mean, get
Forever.
uremia, you die, essentially. Your brain's being poisoned. But it basically, this one disease triggered all of these problems. For me now, today, I have what's akin to stage 3 kidney disease. I was on dialysis about 9 months after giving birth, and I'm very, very lucky to be in the very small percentage of folks who got to graduate from dialysis without a new kidney. But that's something that, and luckily my kidneys have shown signs of repair over time, which is kind of, I mean, it's a miracle. I'm not going to lie. Like all of this is some version of a miracle. It's both like the worst thing that's ever happened to me and the most lucky things that have ever happened to me, all at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask how, like, what you attribute surviving that to.
Well, I would say that it was the marriage of, well, one, I will also say I was a healthy person, I think, before all of this happened.
Yeah, so you
So
had no medical issues,
yeah, generally
really.
speaking, all my medical issues were incredibly mild. I was probably making good choices for a person. So I started at a level, like if I didn't have any bench, I wouldn't be here. Absolutely. I mean, they didn't think I was going to make it. Some of those doctors were like, we didn't think
Well,
Coffman was going to
yeah.
make it out of there. They would joke about it after to me, which I always found kind of crazy. But
I mean, you are kind of, like you said, it's kind of a miracle in
yeah.
a sense of all these things coming together that your body was strong enough to
Well, and it was
recover
not
in a way.
linear. 3 weeks in, I was in a coma.
Wow.
They basically, I wasn't getting enough oxygen to my brain at one point. It was so bad. They put me in a coma. And I mean, my husband got the call in the middle of the night. He's up with the baby, and the doctor called and is like, because I had been in and out of the ICU 3 times, and he was like, I just don't know if she's gonna make it out of this. We just really wanted him. They wanted to prepare him, and he always talks about how he was like, I just don't, she's gonna, I mean, I
Yeah. Well,
wasn't
good for
awake.
him.
I looked I was like, basically, I looked dead, but I woke up again. When I woke up from that coma,
Yeah. What is that like?
very strange. You think it's like the next morning, and they're like, no, it's been days. Yeah. And that at that point, my doctors, I had so many doctors. And this is sort of when I started writing the article. I wrote this article I wrote it about a year ago. It got published in February. So that's when it was published, because they take your article and then it's in line. But I think they also waited for Rare Disease Month. But anyways, I had so many lovely doctors. And, some would say one thing and some would say another. And at this point, I was like just out of a coma, half dead. But for some reason, I was just like infused with I don't know. I just had no more, like, I just did not have it in me to be polite at this
No
point.
more F's to give. Is
I had no more
that what
F's
you
to
wanted to
give.
say?
Yes, I did. I had no more F's to give. I had to get home to my baby. Like, she was like
Yeah.
my North Star. I was like, I have got to get home to her. And I just started to call it out. I was like, it feels disorganized. I just need you to get it together, because I'm not getting better. Because at this point, I also had sepsis. And it was just like they were toggling many things. Like I said, I had a bleeding disorder and a clotting disorder. I had an immune system problem, an immunocompromising drug, and a severe infection. So they had to all work together to to combat these different pieces and strategize.
Without affecting the other piece.
Right, right. So it was a really complicated case. And it was really quite incredible that I think, look, I felt like I was on this bed and I was just like, I'm going to share this and I'm going to advocate for what I need. And I'm just going to hope they hear me. And they cared. This is the other thing. I just knew that they cared. Like they were so excited to see me back awake. I saw a few of them actually tear up
I
at me
bet.
being, because they had been fighting now like 3 weeks to save me. And thank God, one of my doctors started a text message, put all the doctors on it, and they created what I would call sort of project managed my care in a way that was more cohesive and communicative. And at that point, I would say I did not go back to the ICU after that. Now, it still was ups and downs, but I did ultimately, I was on my road to recovery, generally
So
speaking.
really advocating for yourself in the no F's left to give
No.
moment of this journey was
Right.
a trigger to more progress, maybe,
Yeah.
in a way, or
Well,
eventual
I
progress.
think, for me, I was truly, I think there's a lot of debate about using, fight tech terminology when it comes to illness, but I was fighting for my life. Absolutely. At that point.
Did you feel like you were active, like
Oh
part
yeah.
of the fight?
Yes. Yes.
That's good.
And I was
Yeah.
also like having a lot of conversations with essentially whatever you want to call it, God, the universe. I was like, I remember just being in my hospital room and just being like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going
Is this part,
home.
was that part of your life? Like was there a spiritual element of your
I'm
life or a
way more
religious element?
spiritual now than I was before. Because I also, too, I feel like I had so many those strange experiences. I had other ones, too, where I felt like, something was going on. There was a presence there. I felt, and, I sort of joke, sometimes it's hard to know whether it's ICU, like they have psychosis if you're on so much meds and you're not sleeping well. But for whatever it was, like I felt like there was the presence of God in that space. And I believe now in actually more so a collective consciousness. So I was like, I knew I was talking to somebody. I didn't know exactly who I was talking to, but they knew I wasn't going. They knew.
Well, I feel like that's part of, like, I mean, I think at the end of the day, I think that's what everyone does, right? I think whoever's talking to whoever,
Yeah.
you know that you're talking to that person and that's your relationship with
Yeah.
whatever that higher power is.
Absolutely.
But I would imagine too, people tune into things like that a little bit more when you're going through a traumatic experience, right?
Yeah,
I think
totally.
you're just like, oh, I should have been doing this all along, but now I'm going to, like, because like I just talked to someone the other day who went through something, not medically, but like some kind of tragedy in their life. And they started listening to their intuition more and they started listening, and they started connecting with those kind of things more. Because I think for so long, or for some of us, I guess just not for so long, but for some of us, like I felt like I feel like so much of my life, I was just kind of just like going through the motions
Absolutely.
and not really tied into anything.
Absolutely.
And I could imagine if I had gone through something like what you had gone through, this medical emergency, I think that would just naturally make me want to like enjoy each moment now. Is that true for you? Do you feel like I got to live every moment
Well,
now?
like I said, this week is my she's 2.5 now. This is how it happened, began 2.5 years ago. And I talk about, she's going to preschool. And I talk about these moments, and this is they're what I call happy ever after moments. I don't know what's going to happen really. So for me, happy ever after is in those like beautiful moments that happen all the time and that are extra special. And I do not let them wash over me and not notice. I would say I before gratefulness, I mean I've talked about this before, but I think like gratefulness was an effort and practice. Now I just breathe it, you know. And I wish it didn't take all this to make that happen, but it's true.
Yeah, and it's very hard to look back on your moment or your period of time in that hospital with any kind of silver lining, but I'm sure at times there are reflections on, like, how it's changed you as a person.
It changed everything.
Do you
Everything.
see benefit? Do you see, like, not benefit? Do you see, like, like, I've become better at this because of that? Are there those kind of
It
things?
changed my it was a complete shift in my gravitational pull, and that's word salad language, but I would say, like, I had
It's
a
a tasty salad.
it's a lot of salad dressing. Like, it's very it's funny how at first, you know, there's always that massive change when you become a parent. That is a huge change. And so I was already like, I was already dealing with that shift in a very challenging way. I mean, after all of this, I was very challenged in like having postpartum depression, but also I was now a disabled mother. I had my baby in January. I wasn't cleared to like pick her up till April.
Wow.
And so I spent that, in dialysis every other day, essentially, for
For 9 months?
9 months. And that's like a rotation that is not amazing. And it took me, and also I had a ton of medical trauma, right? I had PTSD, like, but through therapy, antidepressants, like that year, I was just literally surviving, literally just trying to survive.
But your North Star was your family
Yeah,
or was your daughter?
absolutely. Absolutely. I was like, we're gonna make this work. We're gonna figure out. We didn't know if my kidneys were gonna come back. We didn't know so many things. And just slowly but surely, like, healing began to occur both mentally and physically. But what, in a span of time, I began to we talk a lot about post traumatic stress, but I don't think we talk enough about post traumatic growth. And I think that's also like probably what people talk a lot about on this show is like you go through the fire and you are forged into something new.
Totally different.
But this new thing, like a diamond, I mean, the metaphor's played out, but let's just go with
Yeah,
it because
go for
a
it.
diamond is effing strong
Yeah,
and beautiful.
yeah,
And now in my
and
life,
has flaws,
of course, of course. Well, we're all works in
right?
progress, right?
Right.
But I think it is true that you go through these terrible things, but there is another side. And if you can put the sweat equity in, the try to like put the mental health piece in, which is so important. Now I spend my life, you know, I just joke turning lemons into Arnold Palmers. Like this, all my work now is about trying to take this earth-shaking thing and make something productive that is of service. Like that's my mission now. And I wrote a book and I'm trying to get it, into the world. But one of the key parts is that before I had no purpose beyond my own ambition. And now I have so much purpose. And it was hard. I spent a long time trying to go back to the life I used to have. Like there was a period of time when I absolutely tried to do that. But
You can't.
you
You don't fit
can't.
in that square anymore. You don't fit in that
No,
shape anymore.
no. And it didn't want to fit me either. I got laid off.
But it was comfortable, and that might be why you
Right.
wanted to go back, right?
Absolutely. But I got laid off 6 months after going back to work, which is its own life shift moment. After working at a place for 15 years, basically. And so it was like the path chose me too. At least that's the narrative I frame in my head, that there is no other option. And so now I spend a lot of my time, I wrote the article, which which was huge, which is insane. It was the number one article in Apple News the day it dropped, like higher than Joe Biden in the NFL, like the weekend before the Super Bowl.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Because it's relatable.
yeah.
People can't relate to the Super Bowl. There's only a certain amount of people that ever play, but like people have gone through medical things and they don't feel comfortable sharing it. And
Yes.
it's not, and it's like we should be, first of all, for multiple reasons, we should be sharing
Yeah.
these stories,
Yeah.
like for our own growth and for people to see that like it's possible to move forward, but also to see, are there systemic issues that could be addressed? Are there protocol like setting up a text chain with a bunch of doctors that could work together to make sure things, functioned a little bit? Like, are there things that we should be talking about and not just being like, I had an issue, I'm better now?
Well, here's the biggest thing that I say constantly that I'm sure all of my dear friends who like listen to my podcast regularly are like, we get it, Coffman.
Here
But
she goes again.
here I go. It is my belief that being a patient is, and actually also, if you love being a caregiver, these are roles that are intrinsically part of the human story. We will all be a patient at some point in some capacity, and also a caregiver if we love in some capacity at some point. Now, the spectrum can look different for us all, but the reality is these are all roles that we will play in our life, and we are deeply unprepared for that.
Well, I mean, I don't know what generation you are, but I grew up with this like achievement culture.
Sure.
It was very much, like next achievement, I call it a checklist life. Like we just had to do the next thing on the list. Like
Sure.
got my degree. All right. Next, get a job, get a promotion, buy a house, do this, do that. And it was never like sit in the moment, celebrate, love, like focus on those things. Like that wasn't like those are just like byproducts or, like whatever
Yeah.
happens on the side. Those aren't the things that we talked about out loud. Those weren't the things. And this is just like such a beautiful point of we're all going to be these two things, no matter where we are in the world,
Right.
what we do for a career. Those are like the end of the day or the beginning of the day, we're going to be patients and caregivers at some point.
I mean, I think some people, it might look different. Like there's definitely people in the world that are going to hire someone to be the caregiver, but they're going to have to coordinate that care. They're going to have to be the advocate. But I also think too, the one that we really don't escape is being a patient.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if I was going to say if we're lucky, but in a weird way, being a patient, because then you can see the care that other people can give or are capable of giving.
Yeah.
And like to your point of these doctors like shedding tears for you, who a month prior was a total stranger to them, right? And probably didn't spend a lot of time getting to know you.
Right.
They knew a lot about your insides and all the other pieces, but yet they cared so much for you and wanting to see you achieve life again and to be you again, that they shed tears over that. Like,
well, I think also too, and this is something I talk about sometimes as patients, I think it's important that we tell our doctors our stories because it helps them. I think it helps them be better doctors, essentially. Like
you mean like your personal life stories?
Okay. For me, they knew I had just had a baby. Like they were invested in this life story, even beyond just me as a lady coming to the hospital. They were invested in getting this mother home to her baby. But even if that's not your issue, but there's probably other things in your life that you dream about and hope about and are creating for yourself that, will inspire and deepen a connection. I mean, look, every physician is different. And I actually think there are like about 4 archetypes of the physicians. Like, I think there's like the robot, but there's the ninja, there's the god, and, there's the healer. But I think essentially everyone wants to, no matter where you lie on the ego spectrum, they want you to go home and be healthy and live your life, But, I think when we use storytelling to storytell our condition, our symptoms, I think it's a really powerful tool for us in any capacity, but especially as patients.
Surviving something this seemingly insurmountable challenge, right? Does that does that instill in you, once you've kind of recovered, done your therapy, helped your mental health and all that, does that create something where, like, if I could beat that or if I could overcome that, I can do anything? Are you kind of that type of person? Be honest.
Well, it's funny. I think we are all, what's the saying? We all contain multitudes. There's always going to be the Taylor that's like a little afraid I'm not good enough. And, but then
I wonder if
there's
that's
also
connected to your dad, though.
yeah, probably. You're right. That's 1000%, 1000%. 1
That'll always be
billion. If
there.
there, so that's there.
Mhm.
And that was like, oh, well, who do you think you are? And then there's another me that was like, girl, you already did the hardest things you ever have to
It's
do.
true. Because I bet there's no one that knows you now that's like, no, if she could do that, she can do anything. So people
Yeah,
from the outside, but totally the inside, I understand, like your dad leaving, that's total abandonment. And therefore, I'm sure you picked up
totally.
perfectionist
Oh
tendencies
my
and all
God.
sorts of things
Don't
that
even.
come, so
Oh,
I
Matt.
feel like that's just probably baked into your DNA, as it is in mine. It's like my mom died, but still for an 8-year-old, that's abandonment. My mom abandoned me in that sense.
Oh, for sure.
And so I took on those things because I didn't want my dad to abandon me. You might not have wanted your mom to abandon you, or whoever was, your caretaker. So, but I say that because I think all the people that get to talk to you, get to see you, get to hear your story are like, she could do anything now. Like, sky's the limit, because she beat something that seemingly so many of us might not have had the opportunity to do. Right place, right time. Like, what if that was triggered when you weren't about to give birth and you were out
Oh my
somewhere
God.
else, right? You said there was time was of the essence in that situation,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. I mean, I think, gosh, at least I was like triggering in a medical setting. I think a lot of people also trigger. I mean, COVID is a trigger for some people. It's a stress event in the body. So even the flu could be a trigger. And essentially, like, those folks that aren't in a hospital setting, sometimes they don't even know that they have this, because there's only really one symptom or two symptoms. One is nausea and the other's fatigue.
And you had both of those, but you were naturally supposed to feel
I
that
was
way. Right,
pregnant. Yes.
exactly.
Yes.
But you were attached to machines like that would
Yeah.
alert other people.
Yes.
So
Yes. Yes. But my doctor that operated me, God bless her, she was amazing. But she had to take off work after saving me,
I bet.
because it was so
I bet.
intense. Because they were like, where is she bleeding from? What's happening? Like I think I was so lucky to have the medical team I had, for sure. I think, and I don't say this lightly, I think if I was somewhere else, I wouldn't be talking to you today. And some of my work now, I'm really trying to get awareness out about this disease. I really want to speak to hospitals and alert them about it. And there's a lot of great doctors who are publishing articles about treatment. And I think, luckily, of the rare diseases, only 5% have a treatment. So this is one of the 5%. So I was so unlucky, and I oddly got very lucky at the same time. So it's like,
That's hard to process, I bet.
it's both. I sort of say I'm the luckiest unlucky girl you'll meet. And now if you were to see me on the street, you would have no idea anything happened to me.
Right. I mean, you don't wear it like a badge, do you?
I mean, I would say I'm your girl that needs a power nap. I'm like,
But you're not out there like, woe is me. You're more like empowered by it because you want to help other
that's right.
people
That's
through
right.
it.
I do think, look, I no longer have any judgment on woe is me. I was woe is me for a while. I
Totally.
had to be woe is
Yeah.
me, because that's all the energy I had. Because you do kind of, I think there's a piece in the chronic illness journey, especially if it's chronic pain or things like that. Man, is that like debilitating. And we just don't have the mental health resources in this country, especially. to help people with that. And I think what, we want to go, oh, those people, they just complain all the time. But they are incredibly strong, the woe is me folk. But I will say,
Oh, yeah.
again, I am very much trying to make this world a better place for all of us. And so,
Because of what you went through.
yeah, and I think I always in these series of near death experiences, I definitely, and I don't know how, this going back to the woo-woo stuff, feel like I was sent back with a new assignment. And I think I'm much more patient with humanity now than I used to be. I mean, I'm pretty mad about a lot of things, don't get me wrong. Getting an election season.
Well, it is 2024, so
but I
exactly.
spend a lot of time trying to save humanity, so I have a lot of faith and hope for it.
Does that make it tricky? I think there's a lot of pressure in trying to save humanity. Is there like, I mean, I don't mean
Yeah.
it like, I could imagine the level of stress that could come with the feeling that you need to help more people. Is that something that like you have to tame as well
sure.
to not trigger another episode of some
Well, I
sort?
think for me, it does feel really dire sometimes. Like it's like you have this energy and you don't know where to put it. And for me, it's like really finding avenues for, like, even just being on this,
Like
being
productive
on this podcast
avenues.
is a great way for me to share and help bring my perspective about, like I said, about the patient reality, about the disease itself, and about advocating for yourself and patient empowerment.
That advocation piece, I think that's so important. Like, it really stuck out to me as in part of your story of like how that was like another little mini shift within the journey.
sure.
Because you're like, get your shit together because I got things to do, like be a mom. So like figure it out.
The
people.
ICU nurses all called me the mama. And I was like, it felt so strange because I'd go, they'd wheel me around the hospital for a test or a scan, and they'd go, there's the mama. But it was like I was doing no mama-ing in that time. I was just trying to survive. But, it's interesting. I think, look, the pressure about saving humanity is, I realize I'm just one person, but I do think we're all individual light posts, and together, you doing this podcast and all the people that you talk to, we're all light posts, and together we shine so bright, and we just gotta like do our things, and like the article, like it spread so far. I mean, 1 million in just a day. I mean,
Yeah.
I
Which is
couldn't
crazy,
even,
right? Now everyone knows my personal
I
story.
couldn't even fathom it at first. And then I was like,
Right.
Oh, I thought this would just like hide in the corner of the internet,
Lots of things
No,
too.
but it definitely didn't. And
Did that lighten your load a little bit when you realized so many people had read it? Or did it make it
it was
harder?
also another life shift. I think for me, it was another life shift, because then all of a sudden, a couple things. I think, and this is a good question, maybe a whole nother podcast about sharing your medical, disclosing that in a world where people need to hire you, in a world where people like, you're trying to work.
Yeah.
And like, I do think like, it's been interesting. Like it's another reality of like, I can't go back again. Like, it did so well. Like the universe is pushing me. It's like, no, you don't get to have that job again. No, you can't go hide. No, this is the direction you're going to go.
Yeah. It's like a nice confirmation of the world was like, yeah, you should be sharing your story and we're going to prove it.
I know. But I feel both very actively part of this process, but also feel the best way I can describe it is I feel like it's like the flow of water down from the mountain into the ocean. Like I'm not like pushing something up a hill. I'm just like doing the next thing. I'm carving through rocks, and I am doing something hard, but I'm going with a certain flow.
Yeah. But it's your own flow,
Yes.
right? It's a flow that this version of your life brings to you. I don't know. I still think there's an uphill battle there's an uphill flow at some points, I would imagine, that you have to push through, or that rock is in the way, like you said, and you have to keep gnawing at it or, breaking it down so that you can get through. I mean, life's not going to be any easier because you've gone through this, right? It's going to be harder in some cases, and maybe your passion and your North Star and stuff pull you a
Yeah,
little
for
bit
sure.
more. But I would give yourself a little bit
I
more.
do
I
think
think there's
some
a lot.
things are easier than they were before. And what I would say, and I know that sounds strange,
Gratitude, like you said,
gratitude, but also like I do not sweat certain things anymore.
because you realize they don't really
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah.
Or you couldn't control them. But that I also just attribute it back to like your childhood pieces. Like a lot of those things, we worry about things because we weren't going to be good enough.
That's right.
Therefore, other things were going to happen. And now seeing this, you're like, none of that shit mattered at
I
all.
know. It
None of it.
didn't.
What's the biggest difference between you now and you before?
Oh, I'm like no longer an innocent little flower just bouncing around my life, you know. I I've like I also didn't know how tough I was,
Yeah, that's,
both physically and mentally.
I bet
I'm like,
mentally was even harder.
oh yeah, for sure. And I went through some like great, I mean, even I could, in that time in the hospital, there wasn't just one time I was trapped inside my body, essentially. Like it happened again later on. And it was almost worse the second time. And I just, made it through. I made it through. And I think it showed me the capacity for us to be able to pass through challenge. And it doesn't mean that, I think, well, let me go back and rephrase this. I think what it does for me is I think I do love humanity more. And maybe that's part of it because I can see how much we can endure and pass through. And it's astounding
Yeah.
to me.
It's, mind blowing hearing your story from someone that hasn't experienced something like that. Here's a really terrible question. So get ready for it. Do you think if you had gone through that experience and not been triggered by giving birth to a child, but like it was just triggered by something else, do you think that your body, your spirit, and all that stuff would have fought as hard?
That's I've thought about that
Mm,
actually. And I actually don't know.
yeah. I think of these things all the time, and it's so terrible because I'm like, oh, here's an example. I'll be watching a movie, like an apocalyptic kind of movie, and people are like fighting so hard to exist or escape the monsters. I'm like, would I just give up on day one? I don't know, And so it's just a curious question because you had this like light that you had to run to, like you
That's right.
had to get to your husband and your daughter, and you had to do, that was there. And so part of me is like, well, what if that wasn't there? Would you
No.
go?
I think about that too. It feels like those sliding doors moment if you've seen that movie. Like if I had triggered this at a different point in a different way without her, I do not know. I do not know.
Yeah, because the previous version of your life, weren't you? You were just kind of like,
Yeah.
eh,
Yeah. Whereas like I was like, and it was interesting. She would come to visit me. The hospital, thank goodness, man, they let her come and visit me every once in a while. And it was like this charging of a battery. So the best way I could describe it, I was in a ton of pain. I'd had 4 abdominal surgeries amidst everything else. I was in so much pain, and she would come and be with me. I would feel like no pain when she
yeah,
was
oh, yeah.
with me.
And it would re-energize that light to fight.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And there was one point where I didn't get to see her for a week, and it was just excruciating. And I was just like, I have got to get home. I have got to get out of here. I would show her picture to every medical professional. If I was like, this is my baby.
This is
I've
where I need
got
to
to get,
go. Right.
this is where I'm going. I want to remind you, this is where we're going. There's no other options.
This is, I mean, your story is just so inspiring, and it just shows us, like you said, the capacity that we have as humans to overcome and to move through and to survive things like this. I think it's just so important that we talk about these things in hard ways, in easy ways, like however we need to, that makes us feel better and that helps other people. So thank you for doing that. I think it's just so valuable how your goal to help other people and kind of just make it more known and make it more normal.
The only like really last important point I think I would love to make is just that, like, I think you see sometimes, I remember before all this, when I'd see someone like me, I'd just be like, whoa, you know, but what's, I really think if I can go through all of this and find like, okay is like my new religion, right? Like find this place of okayness and acceptance and, you know, joy even, and all those things. Like if I can move through this and do it, I mean, I think everyone can. And it may not look obviously the same, but that's like something I really want to tell people, is that you can face the worst things and there can be another side, and to not get lost and just keep going through.
One step at a time, one day at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 minute at a time, however you need to take it to move through it.
That's right.
If you could go, like what you know now, if you could go back to Taylor entering that hospital that day, is there anything you would want to tell that version of you?
Oh my God, I don't even know how I could even explain what's about to happen to me. I think I would just say, like, it's going to be okay.
Yeah, and you'd be
Just
like, what?
and I'd be like, oh God, yeah, of course it's going to be okay. What? Like,
Everyone does
but
this, yeah.
it's insane how the path was to okay. But you know, here we are.
Yeah.
Here we are.
No, I love that. I love that last point of saying, like, you found, like, you're good in the okayness. Like, you found the okayness, like, of your life. And, you know, you've made it to the other side. Of course, there's still battles that you're fighting. There's still things that you're going to be challenged with, but now you know how to attack them differently because of this experience. So thank you for just being you, sharing it, talking in this weird way that I call the Life Shift podcast. I think it's just so healing for that little 8-year-old version of me that I carry with me, just to hear these stories and, you know that there's such humanity and compassion and vulnerability out there doing the things that you're doing. So just thank you for that.
Well, I know our 8-year-old selves are very proud of us.
I hope so. I bring them along now. I'm just like, dude, you needed a hug. You needed a friend. You needed someone to just say things are going to be okay. Like you would have told that version of you walking into that hospital.
That's right.
If people want to find you, get in your space, connect with you, tell you their story, what's the best way to like find you?
Yeah, please come find me. I have a Substack called Rare Disease Girl. I write very candidly about my journey, but also practical tips. I sort of call it like a digital atlas for folks going through a life earthquake, especially a medical one. And then I also very sherry on Instagram and, TikTok. Taylor Coffman made. Come follow me. I'll probably follow you back. Like, come join me, and we'll, I think you can kind of see also too, like my friends is so funny. I just spent a lot of weeks traveling, and my friends go, well, like a lot of people just see a happy late on vacation, but we know what these things really mean. Like this is, again, happy ever after.
No, I encourage you, if you're listening and you want to connect with Taylor, please do share your story with her. I think she would love that as well. And maybe she wouldn't, but too bad. And what I would love is if you're listening to this episode and there's someone in your life that, might need to hear it, share this episode with them. Because I think that's how we do it. We're the light posts. We're helping light the way for these other people. So we would love that. And with that, I think I'm going to say goodbye, and I'll be back next week with a brand new episode of the Life Shift podcast. So thank you, Taylor.
Thank you.
Her dog is barking.
Dog.
No worries.
I know, my dog, of course. She's like, are you done? Are you done? I'm ready to bark at the neighbors.
For more information, please visit www.thelifeshiftpodcast.com.